Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm very excited to introduce my guest today. But before I introduce my guest, I got to give a shout out to our first and official sponsor, All Black Everything Performance Energy Drink, the official energy drink of the Athletic Fortitude podcast, available in Walmart, Mayer, and select GNC franchise locations. And I'm going to be honest, I'm depending on this for this travel series because there's not much sleep. So I'm going to give this a quick sip here, let you know what I think. And it's actually really good. I'm not just saying that. It is let's see, my flavor here is Blue Lagoon. Highly recommend it. It's going to be my drink for the next few days. With that being said, excited to introduce Colton Hock. He's a friend of mine. He's a former Stanford pitcher, pitched 7 years in the Marlins organization. He's a current entrepreneur. What's going on, Colton?
Dude, thanks so much for having me. You've had a huge impact in my life. Going back, we've played travel ball back when we were 16, 17?
Yeah.
Made a great connection then, could see the potential and you as an athlete, and rubbed off on me a little bit. And this last year with everything that you've helped me out with and we've talked about, it's made a huge impact. So I'm pumped to come on and chat with you.
Do you remember the first time we met?
I don't even think it was baseball related. I don't know if we were on the same team, but I think we were out to eat somewhere. Is that what you're thinking?
So here's why it's such a distinct memory that I have, because we played for the Evo. They were the Evo Shield Canes at the time.
Yeah.
I know they changed, but it was like right after tryouts, and they were trying to like place everybody, and you were going to be on my team. You threw one bullpen session. I met you. We were like, hey, what's up, man? Going to be on the same team. And then like the next day they put you on the best team. So we didn't unfortunately get to play a full season together, but that was the first time we met because you played with my boy Luca and JJ, I believe, too.
Yep. Some Pittsburgh greats.
Yes, but it's funny how everything comes full circle. Who would have thought Central PA meeting that we'd be recording a podcast in Dallas, 11 years later.
That's a great point. I know it's like, you never think of it beyond that point, but in Pennsylvania sports too, like it's pretty close. Like I was pretty aware of everyone that was a decent athlete and pretty much the big three in Pennsylvania. And, it's funny that we got to play together. And I remember that day. It's like those high school memories are like so much better in my mind than even my college professional. I can tell you the mornings and the afternoons of those special days. And like, college things will come up with like what happened in games or when we were playing a series. I'm just like, man, I don't remember. But you tell me about high school sports, I can tell you, I can remember everything. I don't know what that is, but that was definitely a great memory.
I wonder because I don't know if that's a PA thing, but maybe it's an all athlete thing. High school sports, I remember every little detail. Every little detail I remember about high school sports. Travel ball, school ball, whatever it was, I remember every detail.
I know it. And I don't know if it was like these growth curves that we hit or the fact that, at the time there was one travel ball for baseball in Pennsylvania. It was the Evo Shield Canes Mid-Atlantic coming through. So it was pretty easy to kind of like, take this talent pool and put it into one place. And then football, we have these like just amazing programs, but we really have like, two main big media outlets covering them. So you're always just aware of who was going to Penn State, who might be on Ohio State's radar, who won the state championship, how many guys were going D1 at those schools. And then, as the cream of the crop rises, you end up always playing together because Pennsylvania does a great job of basically harnessing this talent and getting it together. It's so funny. You and so many other people I played with that were on the other side of the state 4 hours away, I'm still so connected to. Just watching them in their like personal lives now and where they played. And Brendan McKay is a great example. Yes. He was an absolute stud baseball pitcher. Gave up one earned run in 4 years. He's, I believe with the Rays, but I kind of got to play against him so many times, and it's just so funny. I just remember him going to this small school, Blackhawk, in Western PA, and I got a million of those stories. But yeah, it's pretty neat.
At what age did you know that you had the potential to play professionally?
Dude, that's such a great question, and it's so vivid. And I mean, professionally is maybe a little different, but it's really funny to think 10 years ago was when I graduated high school. And in baseball specific, if you hit 90 miles per hour 10 years ago in high school, that was the number to go to a major college, like a major Division I program. And to the point that it was just get to 90. Some coaches would say that, hey, when you get to 90, that's when we really start, looking at you and looking at you as a prospect. which is different now. There's a lot of biomechanical things that have changed in baseball. There's a lot of weighted balls have been introduced. They're now like way more documented, and people know how to implement them better. So kids are throwing now 95, 96, 97. But I remember the first time that I hit 90 was in the summer of my sophomore year. And it was like an unofficial. It was a tournament game, but there was multiple guns on me. And I remember after hitting 90, our tournament director and some other people making some calls to these schools saying, hey, Hock has hit 90. He's a sophomore, which was kind of early at the time. But that was kind of the moment where I was like, okay, not that I needed that to be confident, but I knew that was the benchmark. So it's kind of this really obtainable goal, and like also not abstract. Like it was like, hey, you just hit this number, and that's an easy line for these college coaches to begin to contact you. And really, they don't even need to watch you, because if you hit 90, they can do something with that.
Right.
That's what these college coaches have confidence in. So that was that moment, that sophomore year of in the summer of going into my sophomore year.
Did it change the expectations you had for yourself?
No, and you know what I think it did is it kind of and I never saw it as like stressed out that I have to hit this number. And in fact, it was kind of like the biggest goal I had. Like my biggest goal since I was 7 was to go to Stanford, which I'd love to get into about how that became about. It's such a funny like story, unique, but really like hitting 90 and going to Stanford, like I put 90 at the top of my goal list. Like that was it. Like I wanted, the long-term goal was to hit this number, because I just knew what it would bring and these externalities and how doing A would put B and C into place. But then from there, like, and I don't even think this was from a mentor or just maybe something I read, but I put all these little goals under it, just thinking, okay, how can I do that? And I'm like, okay, well, to do that, I can long toss. Long toss helps with velo. So I'm going to set a long toss schedule. I'm going to start working out and do this program called the 90 mile per hour formula that a guy named Brent Pourceau had put out at the time, which was kind of this groundbreaking, radical. Now it's not so radical, but at the time it was like Olympic lifting and all this stuff that you really don't expect high school athletes to do. And I followed that, and I was like, how can I just put myself in the best position to hit that number? So I made all these little daily goals and weekly goals. And, let's go back to what you mentioned the first time I met you. It was a combine, essentially. If you remember, it was down near Hershey and Palmyra. And that combine had a lot of like push-ups. It had like exit velos, med ball toss, like all this stuff that was kind of interesting. But I remember knowing that setup months out and thinking, okay, I'm going to put myself in the best position that I want to have those numbers. And it was all to get to 90. Like it was all with the goal to get to 90. So, when I hit 90, it kind of put things into perspective, and then it shifted a little bit. Like, okay, I'm at these tournaments now. I hit 90. My my scale familiarity needs to change a little bit. Like I'm seeing these guys hit 95 now. So I've hit 90. Now I have to go back and I have to set these new goals, which by my senior year kind of panned out. I was topping out at 95, 96 in high school games. So like, which is actually funny enough that the highest I've topped out at ever was my senior year of high school, hitting 96, hit 97 once in college. And in baseball, these numbers carry a lot of weight. Like I said, with the 90, when you go to get drafted and you kind of hit 96 and you're a prospect, that's when major league teams kind of start saying, okay, this guy's above the upper echelon with velo. We can make him into whatever else we need to. We can add a pitch. So when that 90 hit and those colleges started coming, it was like my new goal was now, okay, get Stanford on the radar, get there. And then once that happened, the new goal was, okay, time to hit 95, 96 and keep improving. And so it just kind of upped it almost every time.
Talk to me about scales of familiarity. What does that mean?
So it's really interesting, and I think we all do it, but it's more of a financial term in how I've heard it. So like the idea is, if you were raised, and this is the financial sense, but if you were raised in a middle-class family that made $100,000 a year and everybody you knew made like $100,000 a year, then to sit there and say, hey, I want to make $250,000 feels really, really hard, right? Because one, you're not associated with anyone that does it. You don't know anyone that does it. And it seems like it's twice as much as, what you're making now or whatever the case is. So the idea is that like to get to that next level, it seems to be like a huge undertaking because you're not familiar with any plans to get there. You're not familiar with the business ideas, the whatever it's going to be. But then if you get to that 250, it's not like you're satisfied usually. The scale of familiarity then jumps because once let's say you got those anomaly situations where you found yourself making more money, and then basically you're going to start associating with other people that are making that same amount, 200, 250 grand a year. But then you start interacting with people that make 500 grand a year. So all of a sudden you're thinking, man, that's so much more. How do I get to that? I figured out how to make 250, and it keeps going on and on and on. So the scale of familiarity in sports, as I see it, is like, and this is once again, like I went to a high school where it was a public school. We graduated 90, in smallest division in Pennsylvania. I don't know one athlete or baseball player that went Division I. And that's what I wanted to do. In fact, like a lot of the kids had really good careers that I played with. A lot of my teammates went to, local Division IIIs and JUCOs and D2s and had really great careers. And like the scale of familiarity for me was that, like, if I go to practice, like I'm already naturally athletic. In high school, I was 6'5", 210, which is, I just weigh more now. I'm still 6'5". So that was kind of topped out, and I was still a little lengthy, but it was like, I knew that like my scale of familiarity was like, man, if I have a good high school career at Bloomsbury High School, like there's a good chance I could go play at my local Division II school in my same town, Bloomsbury University. And at first, when I really fell in love with baseball, that's kind of what I wanted to do. I was like, man, I could play in college. That is awesome. Like, man, the weight that would hold, I could literally go to college and play baseball. That sounds great. But as like the more I thought about it and what I wanted to do, and I set my goals bigger, I realized, I like I told you, I always wanted to go to Stanford. One of my neighbors was Mike Mussina, and I always looked up to him, and I thought, man, he's had a really cool career. If I can go do what he did and pitch in some World Series, and went to Stanford, I should probably do that too. But I was like, I had to start thinking outside the box, and I had to start thinking of these anomaly situations I could put myself in where I could basically go beyond just the local college to go play baseball and get on a national scale. And so what those things was like, I really took the weight room seriously. And this wasn't a thing that we didn't have a weight room program. Really, no one else was doing it, but I just was familiar with the fact that I was reading these professional, like pitching programs and weight programs put out by Eric Cressy, which is kind of like weightlifting Bible now. But at the time it wasn't. And I just was like, man, that's what these guys are doing. I'm seeing Justin Verlander on stack.com, if you remember. Stack.com doing 385 on his back squat. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I want to be him. So I should probably start taking this more seriously. So me and a group of friends, we started working out every morning at 4 a.m. The only days we didn't from sophomore year, junior year, senior year, high school was football Fridays. It was the only day that we didn't do it, maybe some weekends. And funny enough, those guys, there were 6 of us. We all went to major sports programs and played college sports. So coincidence? I don't think so. But we all put ourselves in a unique situation where we were on the football turf up at the university at 4 a.m. in the middle of winter, doing about 1,000 yards of sprints before we'd go over and work out for an hour and a half, 2 hours at a gym my buddy's dad owned we could get into, going to school, and then playing our sports. So that was number one. Number two was basically being able to call, like, just find these. I found coaches' numbers kind of once I hit 90 and even before. I found these coaches' numbers online. So if you go to, and this is advice for any high school athlete, any parent that's listening to this that wants to help their kid out, if you go onto these university websites, the official sports programs, they have a directory. They have the head coach's email. They have the recruiting coordinator's email, usually phone number. And I would just send them. I had my dad record videos of me weightlifting and throwing a baseball like in December in Pennsylvania, which was like already enough to be like, what's this guy doing? Right. And I would just send them to him. I don't know if I got many responses at the time before I really hit that special number 90, but I was like, hey, my name's Colton Hock. I had a same template I sent to all of them. I would email them to 20 schools just to try to get some responses. And this whole like scale familiarity was like, that wasn't the norm I was used to, but I had to put myself in situations knowing that Stanford and these other Power 5 programs weren't going to come to Bloomsbury, Pennsylvania, 2.5 hours from any major airport, not around any other major sports programs, or close to their schools to come see me. And at the time I didn't look at it that way, but that's what it was. You know, it was this basically, and the idea with like an anomaly to a paradigm shift is like, you know, it's scientific, but like, for instance, if a comet is coming into the atmosphere, it never has happened before. And let's say one breaks through, that's an anomaly. People are like, how did that happen? But then let's say it keeps happening. Okay, well then it becomes normal. Like that anomaly that everyone says, whoa, it's crazy, now turns into the status quo. Like that's a paradigm shift where now it's normal for, you know, that to happen. So for me to work out 4 a.m., everyone was like, you're going to hurt your body. You're going, like all these people from my hometown who had played locally and, you know, were good athletes at Bloomsburg High School 20 years prior said, man, you're going to hurt us on Fridays for football. You're going to hurt yourself in basketball season. You're doing too much. And I was like, okay, well, you know, that was my sophomore year. But my junior year, I was commitments to Stanford, and they're going, wow, what this guy's doing is really unique. You know, I want my son working out with him. Or and then, you know, same with the weighted balls. Everyone's like, you're going to hurt your arm. Do you see all these Tommy John injuries? And I was like, okay, you know, and that was the anomaly that people kind of scratched their head about. And then by my, you know, junior, senior year, I had 6 mile per hour bumps in one off season. And I just was, you know, getting my arm used to the rest of my body through these methods of training. And that was the paradigm shift that happened. So the scale familiarity just changed as it went on.
To become that outlier, was that something that was natural to you, or did you have parents pushing you? Obviously, you mentioned the Mike Mussina comp. What really drove you to want to do this? Like, how much of it was natural versus how much of it was through your upbringing?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think about this all the time, and I give so much credit to my parents, especially my dad, and just how he made me do some things I didn't want to do. And it wasn't hard things. It wasn't working out extra. It was like shaking hands, like
the firm handshake, look in the eyes.
It was, and not that I wouldn't have done that, but like I remember thinking, you know, Dad, I don't know. He goes, just go do it. And I think how this happened is not a clear answer. You know, when I was in 7th grade, I played 3 sports. As you do at all these small Pennsylvania schools, if you're a decent athlete, you have to play all 3, which is great. It's the most athletic thing you can do. But we have an American Legion team back home, and as I told you, there was no travel ball at the time. That was the big team to play on. And 7th grade is the youngest you can play. And I wasn't very good at baseball. I didn't even love it at the time. I just liked sports. Whatever season it was is what I liked to play. And so I went to this tryout. My dad took me to this American Legion tryout he heard about. So credit to him. And the head coach's name was Dale Coombe. And I didn't know these guys. It was about rival school. I was a little intimidated. I wasn't good. I didn't have a good tryout. But my dad told me before the tryout, he goes, right when you get there, go up and shake Coach Coombe's hand and just say thank you for the opportunity. And I was like, you know, of all the things of that day that I had to do with batting practice and throwing, and the last thing I thought, you know, but I said, okay. I usually, like, if my dad said something, I usually listen to him, or there'd be repercussions with any parent. So I went up and I said, hey, Coach Coombe, hey, my name's Colton Hock. Hey, thanks for today, you know, and I really appreciate this opportunity. Tryout ends. Dad and I are driving home, and Coach Coombe calls, and he goes, hey, we just left. The last kid left. I'm here with the coaches. We haven't even talked about anything yet, but they all watched you shake my hand. As long as I've coached, no kid has ever done that. Quite frankly, I don't remember one thing about your tryout, but you're on the team.
That's awesome. And
I remember thinking that was the first time that I was like validated in sports. You know, I played on all these teams. I was never the superstar, but I had been validated. I was going to be the first 7th grader. At the time, I think it was me and one other kid, Zach Kreischer, who made the team as a 7th grader. But we ended up going to like the state tournament. I got to hang out with all these older guys. I got to see their routines. They were better than me. I got to watch them. I fell in love with it right there. So that was the first moment that I was like, man, I really love baseball. You know, I want to go play it at the next level. This is so much fun. Like, there was no pressure. I just, you know, there wasn't these 9U tournaments where your parents are paying so much money and you can feel the anxiety in your parents and taking you out of state. It was in my hometown, and we made it really far, and it was fun, and got to hang out with older kids at the time, which was so cool. And that never changed. And it's so funny because when travel ball came around in Pennsylvania, I was a 9th grader. So it was 2 years later. And there was a dad at a rival high school who was going to start a local team. And, you know, like I said, I kind of fell in love with baseball. I wanted to see how much I could play. And we were at a 4th of July party, and there was Coach Ott, and was his name. My dad said, "Hey, go ask Coach Ott about his team. Just see, what he's thinking." And I went up to him. I said, "Okay, hey, Coach Ott, I heard you're starting a travel ball team. Can I pitch against them for some practice? Can I pitch against your team?" And he said, "Yeah, I'd love that." Next week, I went up, traveled 45 minutes up to Williamsport, pitched against this team. He said, "Okay, hey, I want you to join the team." Well, he ends up being the coach of Evo Shield Canes Mid-Atlantic, which is funny because that's how we met. And so he ends up being, I don't know if he was your coach or not, was he?
He was,
okay,
yeah.
Okay, super funny. So he was the coach, and same thing. I went to that exact event you talked about, and my numbers were really good, and they ended up putting me on the best team. And so it was really unique. And right after that happened, there's a huge event. It's called what is it? Area Code Games. And Area Code Games is the one event in high school baseball that you want to be at. So keep in mind, I just got to this first travel ball team. I just got told, "Hey, you're pretty decent." And one of the guys there, Brent Ronan, who you might be familiar with, Brent, yeah. He's a Pittsburgh guy, but he said, "Hey, I have a say in who goes to these tryouts for this area code team." And said, "Okay." He goes, "Well, I saw your numbers. I want you to go." And he picked like 3 or 4 of us. JJ was one of them, a few others. And I said, "Okay, yeah, I want to." Like that's the upper echelon. That's essentially making the big leagues in high school. That's the best thing you can do. And I was a year younger than all these kids that go because it's a draft camp. It's a draft week like event. And so same thing. I go up to Boston with my dad a few weeks later after we met, and this happened. And the coach there, his name was, I'll think of it. But anyways, he's there. He's a Yankee scout. And there's 13 other coaches who are scouts for other pro teams there. And I'm a sophomore. And all these other kids are juniors, and they're throwing 90. I haven't thrown 90 yet. They're throwing 90. They're throwing 95. I mean, I'm blown away. I mean, I'm intimidated as can be. Get out of the car. My dad says, "Go shake coach's hand and just tell him thanks for being here." And this time, once again, going back to this familiarity, this time I was excited to do that because I knew I was kind of like out kicking my coverage being at this. I got lucky. I knew a guy that had an invite to this tryout that could give it to me. And so I went up to him and I really meant it. And I said, "Thank you, coach. Like, I'm so excited about this. Hey, I'm a sophomore. I know I'm not going to make the team.
Yeah.
But there's 100 college coaches back there, and they're going to get to see me pitch. And that alone, and being up here, it's my first time traveling out of state for an event. This is so awesome." I really meant that. And it still was the nudge from my dad. And in the most insane way, we were in Boston. We were about to go to a Red Sox game. My dad and I checked into our hotel, and this is right. I was one of the first kids to throw. They almost threw me first for whatever reason, probably just to say, "Okay, let's get to the cream of the crop in the back." I really, really think that's what it was. And we get back to the hotel, and I was pumped. I hit 89, so I was really close. And Matt Hyde, Yankee scout, calls me. He goes, "Hey, Colton." He goes, "I want to tell you something." He said, this area code games is for juniors going into their senior year to get drafted. He goes, "But you're a sophomore going into your junior year." He goes, I've been an area scout for decades." He goes, "I've coached my whole life." He goes, "I've never had a kid come up and thank me and shake my hand." And he goes, "I want you on the team." He goes, "This is going to be a great opportunity for you. I know you're looking at colleges. I don't know what this means for your draft status, but we've done this with one other kid ever for this team. And he was a first rounder. His name's Tyler Beatty. He's actually still pitching. He's a great guy. We've been able to meet a few times, and I look up to him so much. But he goes, "You remind me so much of Tyler Beatty." And he goes, "I want you on the team." And actually going out to that tournament in August of my sophomore summer, going to my junior year, is when Stanford saw me for the first time. So you talk about all these sports things that I could have done, this weight room stuff, this weighted ball programs. But the biggest milestones and steps and progress and opportunities I had came from stuff that had nothing to do with my baseball ability. A little bit to do with it, but majority just, being that anomaly, doing something a little different from the status quo, getting outside of that scale familiarity that I was used to. So, you asked, and it's in part due to, my dad pushing me at first, and then me just catching this bug of just loving baseball and wanting to play as far as I can and keep growing.
How would you describe your competitive energy? Like, because you see people talk about killer factor, it factor, your competitive energy, how would you describe it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like, there's so much to decompartmentalize in that. But even with me saying that, one thing that when I realized I have my best competitive energy is when I'm so confident in the things I can control. And there's so much you can't control on the mound in baseball. You can make a good pitch and it can still get hit out of the park. But some things that I can control, and how many times have you heard this? The only two things you control are your attitude and effort. And, you know, I almost wanted to go to Stanford to just like fake the fact that I was smart, because I knew it was this school where like these incredible athletes go, but you can't just get in. Like, you don't get gold star recruits. You have to get the actual tests, and you have to do really well in the SAT and ACT. And then, you know, there's no special classes there for athletes. And I almost was like, man, I'm not that smart, but like if I go there, I can at least like almost fake it, right? Like, we'll figure it out once I get there. Let's just see if I can do that. And because my whole like career has been just like the KISS method of like, keep it simple, stupid. Like, anytime I begin to overthink anything is when I get myself in trouble. So through all of this, I'm just like, what can I control? I can control my attitude. I can do my best to be a team leader. I can control my effort. I can make a plan for myself. I can make a routine. And what that brings though is what you asked, my competitive energy. It brings me a lot of confidence. So I have so much confidence in that by the time that the game gets there, yes, I'm nervous. Yes, like there's an unknown variable, which is where that excited anxiety comes from. But like, I take that mound with confidence, knowing that I've done everything I can to leave it out there. And so, especially as a closer the last 7 years, and really a back inning, ninth inning guy, there's so much you can't control. It's a leverage situation. People call it the baseball gods, but like, you know, home, away, like there's so many things that are outside of your control that just seem to fall into place with baseball. And like, when I started overthinking stuff, I got away from that confidence. And my mechanics would get out of whack, and then I'd be thinking 7 different cues on the mound. And all of a sudden, like, hitters, they become, dude, they're sharks. They smell blood. You don't even know you're bleeding, and they smell it, and they act on it, and they get hits, and they get, you know, they bring runs around, especially in those last innings. So anytime that my competitive energy was down because I was overthinking something, I didn't have confidence in myself, even if I had to fake it that day, even if I had a terrible throwing session, I felt like crap, it didn't matter. Like, I just, you know, I had to turn it on. And if I didn't have that every time, the hitters proved it to me every single time. It's amazing how that happens in sports, especially at the higher levels. And one thing that you and me talked about that I had been doing and didn't even realize it, and I'd watched a lot of these older pitchers I played with, like Sergio Romo, who's incredible, nothing special, but he always got it done for over a decade in the league, is they almost hit this alter ego. So they hit this alter ego of like, whatever's happened is just canceled out, and I'm going to absolutely kill you out there. And I started, my best success on the mound is when I've had that. When I can go back now in my career, college and professional sports, I can look back on my best outings. And that's what you want to do. You want to visualize your best. How did I feel that day? What did I eat? What did I do? And those best days, I had this attitude of like, no one's going to touch my stuff today. I'm going to absolutely kill this team. They do not stand a chance. And it wasn't me just saying that to myself. It was me believing it. It's a switch I just turned. You know, when I heard my name called, I got up there like, today is my day. They don't stand a chance. They're taking this away from my family. And so you and me talked about identifying that alter ego, put a name on it. Yes. And I haven't quite done that, but what that did in these heightened 8th, 9th inning situations is now I can hit that alter ego. You know, I just had newborns when I'm up at 3 a.m. Yes. And I'm losing my mind. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, no, you got to be a little crazy right now. I got to hit my alter ego because, you know, like this is unorthodox. Should we get my 8 hours? It's not happening, but I'm going to be my best right now. And when I'm at the gym and, you know, we got deep 4 sets, maxes, or, you know, we got sets of 12. By the time doing these workouts for so long, I get in the 3rd, 4th set and I'm just depleted. And the only thing I can do is just hit that. No one's going to outwork me in here. And you just hit this switch. And that is when my competitive energy was the best. And what that does is that it snowballs. So like, you know, in baseball, to get to the big leagues, you have to be consistent. That's the one thing. You watch these big leaguers on TV, some are incredibly talented, but all of them are consistent or they're not there. They can every day show up. They can flush a bad outing in 24 hours. Sometimes they can flush a bad pitch. They can flush a bad inning, come back. They can flush, a bad second. It's incredible. But the more you make yourself consistent, the better you are. So what I saw with this competitive energy and being able to have that confidence and find a way to get to that confidence was that it snowballed to where I'd be in these ruts where I'd have I'd string together 2 or 3 bad outings. Maybe it was mechanical, maybe it was my mindset, but I would sit back and I would say, okay, what am I doing that when I get the call and I take that mound, I'm the best out there. No one's going to beat me. I'm the best in the world right now in this position. And then I'd have a good outing. And then that confidence would actually be there. I would actually have confidence, be like, yeah, I am. I just said it. I believed it. And I just did it. Okay, so you get the call. I get the call the next day. Hey, Hawkson for the 9th. We're up 1 run, or maybe there's runners on. It's like, yeah, I am in. Like I'm going to go out there. I'm going to dominate right now. And these guys don't stand a chance. Do you want to know who's up to bat? No, I don't care at all. I don't care if it's a lefty or righty. They don't stand a chance. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to demoralize them. And then that compounds and it compounds. And then, you have a little setback and then you go back to that alter ego and you believe it again. And that really pushed me through really early in my career, especially.
I love the alter ego thing because I know it works in my own life. Because naturally, to be honest, like I've become a little introverted in my life, but yet I have a podcast, I have a newsletter, and it's like my alter ego in that sense that brings a different side of me out. And it's not fake, but it's a side of me that I normally don't let loose. But when I do step into who that person is, it's a side of me that I actually really get to like and enjoy and have these conversations that I'm so curious about. So I love the alter ego piece. Is there anything you can tangibly point to that helps you flip that switch, that helps you allow yourself to let go of the previous pitch, good or bad? Because I had the director of performance psychology for Alabama on, who worked really closely with Nick Saban. And he says the number one reason that Saban is so good, outside of all the leadership and everything else, is he's able to flip that switch, good or bad, so quickly. They win the national championship. Literally the next day he's in there setting the tone for the offseason. So it's really hard to do that. Yeah. Is there anything you can tangibly point to in your own career that enabled you to get better at that as you matured?
Yeah. I've done everything that's benefited me or progressed me or gotten me where I was has all come through failure. All of it. And, you mentioned Nick Saban and quite frankly, in this point in his career, there's not a lot of failure, but there was. He was in the NFL. He didn't have a lot of success there. There was some probably things he needed to change, or maybe not. Maybe I don't know. But for me, this alter ego and this has all come from failure. And just getting to a point where I just didn't like where I was going. And it wasn't anything serious. It was a couple bad outings in a row. It was the weight room example where I had never skipped a set of a workout because I believed in believing it. But then maybe there was a couple of days where I decided to take that 4th set off. I hated the way I felt after it. Just felt like I let myself down. And this all, for me, came back to just confidence in myself and knowing who I was and what I could control. I could control that 4th set. I could control going back out there on the mound and trying to get better. I could also control the fact that maybe I just wanted to sulk in it for a while. And if I chose to, I could have done that. And I just look back on it, and those are 2 vivid sports examples, but I have these every day. With just little micro examples in my personal life, in my entrepreneurship life and my athletic life still. And I get to this point where I know there's an opportunity that I don't want to feel guilty ever for letting myself down and letting people down around me. And I always think, okay, who do I want to be? Who's the person that I want to be? And this is a great mental exercise. Sometimes I just close my eyes and I think, I'll read something of someone I really admire and I get jealous, or I'm excited or whatever the feeling is. But I think, okay, who do I want to be? Who does Colton Hock want to be? What is the family man I want to be? What's the husband I want to be? What is the father I want to be? What does the ultimate sports success look like for me? What does the ultimate business success look like for me? And then I just fill in those blanks, that void of how to get there from where I'm at. And like I said, this usually happens when I'm in a valley, in a small valley or a face failure. And it's just a way of getting myself back on track. And then that's when I decide sometimes where I'm just so upset and I hit that alter ego. And I said, you know what? This is uncomfortable, but I'm going to live in it. And I'm going to get out of it because I hate the way this feels right now. I feel that way sometimes. I'll scroll on social media for 10 minutes. Like, what am I doing? I hate this. I want to scroll more, but you know what? I'm putting my phone down and I'm going to get up and I'm going to help my wife with our kids, or I'm going to do the dishes, or I'm just going to go on a walk. And it's just this thing I decided to choose. And that's my alter ego, and you mentioned putting a name on it. I know you have a name, but I'm still thinking of that. And I just know, okay, I think light switch, just flip that on.
It's beautiful. Now, I want to take a quick step back real quick because there's something we talked about earlier, and it's the scales of familiarity. You keep progressing, moving up. You get to 250K. It's like, oh, now I'm around 500K. How do you balance being grateful, but then also always wanting to push yourself more?
Yeah. In business and sports, there's so many cliches that overlap, and they're cliches for a reason. Because they're true.
Yes.
Because people say them because it's exactly the case. Like everyone's like, oh, that's cliche to say. Yeah, it's exactly the truth. And so there isn't. But one thing about sports is you always want to be the best. Like every day that I took the field, I wanted to be the best in the world. I only looked at the best. I only studied the Walker Buehlers, the Justin Verlanders, and there was other really good pitchers that had ERAs around the same, but weren't as talented, and I didn't study them. I wanted to be the best. That's why we idolize Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Caitlin Clark. If you're a female, like we because they're the best. What did they do? I want to be the best. And that's one thing that sports allows you to do. No one is ever like gonna punish you for wanting to be your best healthily. Like if you tell your parents or you tell your spouse or you tell your coach, I want to be the best, and this is what I'm going to do it. Like, they're all pretty excited for you, and they're in your corner. Business is slightly different, in my opinion, where, like, you can really – it's much easier almost to, like, for things to get out of control, right? So, like, for instance, we mentioned money, but, like, if you if you make $250,000 and you can do that healthily and you have family time, and, like, what's the point of going to 500? Like, if you live within your means, and, like, in business, this can really spiral out of control. To where before you know it, you're working way more than you should. You're neglecting your family. Really, what's the cost so you can have something, a nicer car each year? And so that's the one thing that I kind of love about sports is I have that mentality. I want to be the best in whatever I do. Like it drives me crazy sometimes, but in sports, it's so like it's like it's allowed, and that's where it's amazing. If it's a workout class, being the best is allowed. You're supposed to within those confines. So. I think that's one of the unique things about it. But I think for the most part.
Do you have satisfaction in the way that your career has gone? And do you ever think about if you could have done more?
Yeah. And you've mentioned the gratitude that comes along with it. And this is cliche to say, but I think gratitude is the best trait in a person that I associate with or that I know or anybody. It's the best trait, and it's the best thing about me. Like, it's my favorite thing about me is when I have gratitude. And it's one of those things that it's really tough sometimes to look back and I never made the big leagues. I haven't made the big leagues yet. And so I haven't been the best. And that upsets me sometimes. And I get down about that. And like, the only thing that brings me back to that playing field of knowing that I saw the opportunity is looking back on the way my athletic career has panned out, the people that have helped me, the way God's helped me, the way God has guided everything, the things that I have done for myself, the way my spouse, my wife has supported me. And it's really interesting because I think some people are naturally very grateful and optimistic. There's two types of people, generally. And some are just naturally good at it. And that's an amazing trait. Like, that is an amazing ability. But sometimes I think no matter what, at some point that fades, in the midst of hard times, injury, a lot of, not making your dream, not making the big leagues yet. But there's some practical things that I've done alongside you actually that have really helped with that. And one of them is waking up in the morning and taking 30 minutes for myself. 30 minutes to put my phone down, open a journal, not my phone, but open an actual journal, start noting and 10 things that I'm grateful for, not just that day, but like always been grateful for. Start my day with writing down 10 things. And it's really hard to do. I mean, we went through this thought exercise and I said the same thing for a couple weeks. But the more that you really lean into that and realizing everything that you have and why you are where you're at and the things that have benefited you and the people around you that have helped out, those 10 things that might stay the same. Maybe you can't think of 10 things. There was a couple of days I couldn't think of 10 things. You start to notice the little things, the little things. Thank you for this warm coffee I'm having. I'm grateful for this warm coffee that I can just sit here and brew a Starbucks, coffee here in my house, and it tastes amazing. Thank you for the fact that I got 7 hours of sleep last night. I had an amazing dream. Like these things that before, you wouldn't even take time to recognize, and they turn into these really big things you're grateful for. And I think that's the one thing that has just allowed me to step away from my identity as a high performing athlete that just wants all the success in the world. And quite frankly, I'm not satisfied till I feel like I have been the best. And that's just kind of the motivation that has been there. But that allows me to put myself back in a good headspace, in a good spot to where I recognize everything that's happened to this point. And no matter what, that I am within my own success right now.
A couple things you said, the naturally grateful aspect to some people is phenomenal, because I used to not be that way. Yeah. I used to be very negative. I used to be very pessimistic. And for me, the transformation into becoming more grateful, to choosing gratitude, night and day. Like you could talk to my wife. We've been together since we were 15, since we met. My wife and I were together. And she'll tell you the totally different person I became. Like people that grew up with me wouldn't believe it. And to actually sit in gratitude, like you said, I couldn't have said any better. You begin to notice other things. It becomes contagious. It goes from, really selfish attitude to, I'm just grateful I can walk. I'm grateful that I have senses, right? I'm grateful for my family. You name it. There's a million different things that you just start to notice. I'm grateful for nature, grateful for going on walks. And for me in my own athletic career, it's such an internal struggle because I didn't live out my dream. I didn't make an NFL roster. Sure, I got into minicamp, and that's where I'm incredibly grateful for that, because I see now more than ever people who had better careers than me not even get into minicamp. And so I reflect, I'm like, wow, that's pretty awesome. I got there, but I never met my own expectations. So it's always this constant battle for me when I reflect on my own athletic career. But I think the point where I was able to fully accept and be satisfied with my career is I got to a point where I proved to myself everything I needed to. So after I got cut, I ended up trying to come back, play again. I had to work out for an XFL team. The workout went really well. I ended up trying to get into some NFL camps. I ended up getting hurt in training. So I ended up just calling my career. Then my daughter was born and I was like, I'm good. But the growth I had when I started really working on the mindset, the gratitude, working on and engineering my identity to who I wanted to be outside of athletics, was when I actually had my biggest growth in athletics. Right. Was when I started to stop making that the only priority in my life, was when I actually had the most growth there.
Totally. Same.
And so that's when I got to the point where I had proved everything I needed to, because I was a significantly better athlete, significantly, when I was 23, 24, 25 than when I was actually playing. So for me, I proved everything I needed to. But I really wanted to highlight that gratitude piece, because I think it's hard to pinpoint one thing that changes your life. Yeah. But it changed mine. And I'm grateful that I learned how to be grateful.
Colin, the thing is like anybody can do. First off, you and me both feel the same way, that once we recognize this and recognize the gratitude and the things we're thankful for in our life, our careers changed. And keep in mind at that point, to change and hit this next plateau in our career is really hard to do. It wasn't something physically you did. It wasn't something, somebody did for you. It was something internal that doesn't have a direct correlation right away, but ultimately made the difference. Anybody can do it. If you're in 8th grade right now, if you're in 4th grade, and you can wake up in the morning and you can think of 10 things that you're grateful for, maybe everyone else in the world has it. I'm grateful for my daughters. Most people have the opportunity to have daughter,
I'll say this about kids. I wish I could tell everyone go have a kid
Yeah.
because it's the best thing in the world, at least for me. And we're both very involved fathers. Like,
Yep.
To me, it was probably more than anything helped me move on from athletics. And I know you're kind of in that in-between stage right now, where you're in between jobs, you're a free agent. Talk to me a little bit about what you're going through right now with that. What do you miss the most, and how is being a father helping you progress through that?
Yeah, I hate saying this, and I've told this to a lot of my friends who don't have kids, but they've asked, how is it? And I said, it's a feeling reserved for only a dad. It's indescribable. And I'm telling you that because I couldn't feel it till I laid eyes on them. I have twin daughters now. They're 7 weeks old yesterday. It's just indescribable. It changes everything. And we talked about this on the way here. It's got to be biological. It's got to be, it is for my wife for sure, but like just my priorities, the things that I believed in, my routine changing and being a lot less about me, total selfless. And that doesn't even hold a candle to what my wife's doing right now, our wives. But yeah, it's so interesting. And this is so funny in how it ties into the gratitude piece. So last year, opening day, it's my 7th year of my contract, which after this, I'm a free agent. So your 7th year, you want to have the most leverage. You want it to be your best year. I was going to start in AAA. I had a really good chance of making the big league roster at some point last year. Put myself in that position. Had the help from a lot of people around me to be in that position. Opening day, I'm throwing a pitch to Paul DeYoung, who's with the Cardinals. Throw a pitch, no injury. Boom, my arm just lights up like a glow stick. Felt like you took jumper cables. And so I throw the pitch and I'm like, what in the world is going on? Maybe it's cold. Let me just throw another one. Arm just basically shuts down. Call the trainer out. Never been injured in my whole life. I haven't had a stub toe. I've never missed one practice. I've never been late for anything because of an injury. I've never had one injury. And I'm 27 at the time. Yeah, 27. And freaking out. So I let it sit, go to brush my teeth the next day, about swallow my toothbrush. I got no feeling in my arm from my forearm all the way up to my shoulder. Nothing, completely dead. It's hanging there. It looks like my grandmother's arm before. It was just hanging.
Yeah.
And so anyways, long story short, ended up getting diagnosed with musculocutaneous nerve injury. Sounds fancy. It's not. It's you've never heard of it because that nerve is never supposed to be injured. In fact, there's about 5 pitchers who have ever had this injury. One of them was my teammates, which really helped. But anyways, which is also ironic, and I'm very grateful for. And but I saw all the major doctors, Neil Alatrosh, Keith Meister, a few others, our team doctor, and they said, listen, it's we don't know how it happens. You didn't even do anything wrong potentially, but somehow that nerve got stretched. It looks like it's damaged about 15 centimeters. And I'm going to tell you something. This injury, it's very well documented over these 5 cases, but it heals at 1 millimeter a day. Nerve heals slower than bone, heals slower than your brain, heals slower than your heart. It's the slowest healing fiber in your body. So as long as you're not stressed out, as long as you take care of it and don't injure it again, you got 1 millimeter a day, and it's 15 centimeters. So at 150 days, it should start turning back on. And tell someone who's never had anxiety, hey, as long as you don't stress out about this, you'll heal. I was freaking out, man. Like, to the point of like, I was realizing the fact my career was on the line. Like, I wasn't going to pitch. Like my trainers, and they see injuries, like, hey, buckle up, man. You're going to be here all year. They're smiling about it, and I'm fake smiling. And I'm like, this is it. This is quite literally it. Like, where do I go from here? Why, what's my motivation? I already know I'm done this year. If I don't pitch this year, no team's going to call me. They're not going to call and say, hey, we want you on our roster as a free agent. You didn't pitch that all last year, but we have faith in you still. No, it's just, baseball's tough. Like, there's a million guys that throw 100. There's only so many roster spots. I don't even throw 100. And so anyways, I had to sit there some really tough days, sit there and face the fact that, is this real? I had some really good mentors at the time that had faced similar stuff, and I'm really lucky to have them. Before this, I didn't even realize you needed mentors and how important they were, being able to talk with others going through it. But anyways, I was like, you know what? I have the opportunity right now to control my attitude, control my effort. I had, my wife there who was so supportive of me. And as funny as this happens, this is so crazy, but my wife has a dream. I got to a point, I'm down in Jupiter, Florida, rehabbing. It's been 3 months now. Nothing has changed. My arm's hanging there. I wake up every day, face 100 people saying, hey, how's your arm today? That's hanging there. Nothing. Are you flexing? Nope. Can't feel a thing. Totally dead. And I got to a point that it just kind of got the best of me. I called my wife, and she's so good at, she was working here for Bally Sports at the time, covering baseball, which made it all a unique situation also. And I just said, like, honey, like I'm defeated right now. And she's like, I'm coming tonight. I've never heard that in your voice. I'm coming tonight I'm going to be there. And so she got in about 11 o'clock. I picked her up from the airport, just go to bed. It's 5 a.m. and she wakes up crying. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, what's wrong? What happened? I have no clue what happened. She goes, Colt, I this has never happened before, but I kid you not, I just talked to God on the foot of our bed. And she's like, I don't know what this means. I don't even think I believe in dreams. But she goes, I felt awake. I didn't even realize I was sleeping. I thought I was awake and he was right there. And he was looking at you and he was just smiling. And he said, listen, he's going to be okay. He's going to be all right. You're going to be okay too. And you keep doing what you're doing. Keep supporting him. And I promise this isn't the hardest thing you guys are going to go through. And she said, I was trying to talk back to him. I couldn't. I was in awe. And I woke up and realized I was dreaming, started crying, I had to wake you up. And we just sat there, said, write this down, let's think about this. What could this mean? We prayed about it. And that was June. July, the Marlins let me go home. They said, hey, go home, be with your family. That's going to help your nerve. It's going to, you're going to relax a little more than being here. I went home and I think July, found out we're pregnant in August. So going home, did amazing things for my family. Conceived in July once I went home. Found out we're pregnant in August. My arm turns back on in August. And I'm not saying that understanding the gratitude and working through those things played a role, but when my arm turned back on, it was the most minute little flinch ever. But that was it. That's how it starts, because there's no muscle there. It had died. The muscle had gone away in 4 months. And my wife is like, let's go eat. We're celebrating this. This is amazing. And I said, no. I was like, there's so much work to do. I was like, it just turned on. Like, this is months later. Like, I got 4 months at least to build this back up before I can even start throwing. Like, look how dead it is. That's all it did. She goes, no. She goes, that is the biggest win of the year right there. At this point, we didn't know we were pregnant. But she goes, that's the biggest win of the year right now. We need to celebrate this. And it brings me back to something you and me talked about with being able to celebrate the wins, be grateful for each win, even the small ones. Hey, I got warm coffee today. What a win. And then also the losses, recognizing them, but not letting them beat you down too much. In this case, I had let this loss beat me down, and luckily I had my wife there to pick me back up, and remember who I was at the time and celebrate this win with me. And I look back on that day of when it first turned on, her excitement, my excitement, and thinking at first I'm not excited, but wow, actually I am. My arm did turn back on. And then a few weeks later, finding out we're pregnant was the most amazing thing. And, I'm still a free agent. And to my thought, not getting picked up and missing that whole year for injury has been really tough as a free agent. But as soon as the baseball season starts, I had my 2 girls, and like, it just makes me think when I look back on my career, just how proud I am that it brought me to that point right there where I got to play 7 years in the pros, not in the big leagues, but almost at every other level, play with these guys. And now I got to transition into something that's truthfully way bigger in sports. And quite frankly, my daughters will never even know that part of me. They'll know this new part of me as their father, whatever else is next. And, there's days that I miss it, and days that, I wish I was on a team and I see my friend succeed. I'm so excited. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I was in that locker room with them. But then, in those moments, those 3 a.m. moments, I just look at my daughters and I'm like, so grateful for you guys that I have this. Like, God, thank you for this timing of this, for these girls, like, that I have the opportunity to focus all my energy on them. I have friends right now who can't conceive, they can't get, and I'm just thankful that he allowed us to. and I'm praying for them and just all this stuff. So there's so much wrapped into it. And I know it's a long answer to it, but there's all these things that happen to bring us to this moment right here. And I think it's just important being grateful for them and highlighting them, because it's constant. It's never going to stop.
And honestly, it makes me a little emotional, particularly the kid piece, because when I pick up my daughters and I look at them and they're holding me or smiling at me, they don't care I played football. They don't care I was an athlete. They don't care how competitive I am. And like in your story, what feels like the lowest moment of your life, and then quickly it's the greatest moment of your life. It's, not everyone's faithful, but I'm extremely faithful in my own life. I can't tell you how often I lean on God in those situations where I know time and time again, no matter how low of a point I've been, something good's coming around the corner. In my own life, and I've talked about on this podcast, in my newsletters, how many injuries I've been through. So I'm the total opposite of you. You had one injury. Yeah. I have like 2 per year. Yeah. And not like minor ones. Like, I've had 4 knee surgeries. I've had wrist surgery. I've broken just about every bone in my body. But those moments, and, well documented, I've talked about this past one, like you're just laying there and it's sometimes you feel hopeless.
That's it.
And it's like, I look at my leg. I remember the first time after this last surgery, we took off the wrapping of my leg and I look at it. Like you said, it looks like a grandmother's and it's just dead. There's nothing there. I can't flex, can't move. I can't even change myself at this point. My wife has to help me change. And I don't cry a lot. Like, not because I'm tough. It's just not an emotion I do a lot. Mm-hmm. And I just break down sobbing because I know how hard I worked. Not just the past year, but my whole life into being strong, into being physically fit and athletic. And here I'm looking at this leg and I'm like, this is the most pathetic leg I've ever seen in my life, and it's mine. And I don't know if it's ever going to come back. So in that moment, I can relate to you where it's the anxiety, the pressure. And this is after I've done all this work on myself to where I'm at a high level of, confidence and competence. And it didn't matter. I'm not playing sports anymore, just in general, but taking it one day at a time and just getting really good at, again, we keep going to gratitude, but focusing on the good things and knowing and trusting something good is coming. Something good is coming along. And, we've communicated throughout my own rehab process, throughout yours, and, just being cleared to run a couple of days ago, significantly, I'm 3 months ahead. I'm not supposed to be running till 9 months. I'm running at 6 months, and having the surgeon, the PTs say, we've never had someone recover this quickly. And just knowing that it's not going to feel good every day. And to be honest, most days it doesn't feel good at all.
Yep.
But to just keep doing the right things and keep trusting, whether it's in a higher power or just in the universe, or just if you do the right things, mm-hmm. something good. It may not be what you think, but something good is going to come along. And that's, I can just relate so well to anyone, any athlete who's had any type of injury or setback in that manner. And that's why your story just, because it was the first time I heard that.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot, but that was the first time I heard that, but it struck a chord in me. Does it ever surprise you how resilient you can be in those moments?
Every time. Because I look back, I never want to get too far ahead of myself, but I love looking back. And I just love analyzing things I did good, things I did bad, things I could have done better, but not. And I just think of, I literally think of God in the room with me, laughing at me. Like, man, see? I think about that all the time. That's been my visual since I was a kid. Just whatever it was, shaking a coach's hand, feeling so weird about doing that. What? He's going to laugh at the other coaches with me because I went up and shook his hand? No. Gosh, see? Look at it. I think about that all the time through everything, through my arm turning back on and it bringing me back home to be with my wife, conceiving my 2 daughters, which I love more than anything. I wanted to share something that's not, you want to talk about how much we're just information overloaded today.
Yes.
As an injured athlete, having a million people have something to tell me about it, which is great, and I appreciate all of it, but I don't retain all of it. It's really tough. I got to keep it simple, or I just like my brain turns to mush. But I'm sure you're familiar with the Netflix documentary Full Swing.
Mm-hmm.
They do a really cool episode where they go into psychology of some of these golfers, specifically Joel Damon and Wyndham Clark. I believe his name's Wyndham Clark.
Yes.
It's amazing how they do this, and I can't stop thinking about it. I've thought about it every day since I watched it months ago, literally months ago. But Wyndham Clark was this really raw, good golfer. He had spouts in the top 10 of these big tournaments, but he always came up short. They talk about his history a little bit, and he just talks about how hard he is on himself. A lot of negative self-talk. A lot of getting down on himself for not being the best. And before I found out what was next, I just related. That's me. I'm going through an injury right now. I don't have a team. No one's calling. If I made it to the big leagues, I probably would be getting calls. I couldn't even do that. You know, this creeps in. If you don't have it, you're crazy. And if you don't have it yet, it'll come. Don't worry. Just the realistic truth of it. And so I just instantly, I feel like my eyes dilated, and I just started focusing in on this part more. And he ends up meeting with a sports psychologist, sports therapist, and it changes his life. And he credits it to one thing. He said, I started winning tournaments the moment I realized that good things were going to happen. And it just hit me. And I just looked back, and I did this synopsis of like everything I've told you so far. And I looked back and I said, wow, that's been the same thing in my life. Every time I believed something good was going to happen, it almost did. And I just think about Wyndham saying that every single day. I mean, I don't know much about him, but I just root for him because I know that we share so much of that. So in the same way that you and me share, different stories of injury and, different ways of coming about it, it just comes back to, and it starts with the foundation of gratitude and just believing that good things are going to happen. Some days it's really hard. Some days it's forced. Some days you lie to yourself. Yeah, we're going to get through this. I don't know if we are, but we're going to believe that we're going to. And I just love that piece of information that stuck with me since I've watched that.
I think in athletics, I've talked about this before. I believe we've talked about it. There has to be some type of subconscious acceptance that things can go wrong, because that's what makes playing the game so fun, is that unknown piece. But I think where athletes and what you're talking about struggle is they focus too much on that consciously, and they don't think about, well, what can go right, and putting their energy into that. And the piece that's so hard in athletics is accepting this may not go my way. I may lose. I may miss the shot. I may give up a home run. I may give up a touchdown. I may miss the block, whatever you want to, label it as. But I also can make the shot. I can strike the guy out. I can score the touchdown or get the interception, whatever it is. And just putting your energy into that. And then subconsciously, you can let yourself know, hey, I may fail, but then there's another opportunity, or I'll create another opportunity. And just putting your energy and faith into what could go right. And that internal dialogue piece, which the more people I talk to, the more athletes, the more sports psychologists, the more coaches really come back to that internal dialogue piece. And I think it's really hard. And I know it's really hard to master that internal dialogue, because it is tough. And even when things are going right, sometimes it's still hard. It doesn't always feel great when things are going right.
Yeah, you're fighting human nature.
Yeah. But if you can just get better at that and chip away at that and just focus your internal dialogue. And I'll tell you this, actually, some people actually really do well speaking negatively to themselves or in spurts, but you have to know who you are. And you only do that through trial and error. In tracking, you talked about this earlier, I wanted to ask you about, because I think it's really important, is the tracking piece. Well, days I performed really well. Well, what did I do? What did I eat? Who did I talk to? Who filled my cup full of energy? Versus, okay, when I performed bad, what was I doing that performed bad? And I think with the internal dialogue piece, you have to learn how to communicate with yourself. What's effective? When do you need to say, hey, Colin, I don't like to swear, but Colin, quit being a bitch. Let's go.
Yeah.
Or to give myself some grace. And my doctor did this for me the other day, because I talked to him. I was like, it's really hard for me with pain because I don't want to be soft. And he goes, Colin, he's like, you're healing.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to be an alpha all the time. And I just laughed. And my wife was there and she starts cracking up because she's like, he doesn't want to be a beta male. And I'm big on that. Like, you know, not being the toughest guy, but like,
Totally.
hey, like I'm in control of everything at all times. Like that's like my view is I can control as much as I can. You're not going to like knock me down. He's like, Colin, you're healing. And mentally, physically, emotionally, it's okay to allow yourself to heal sometime.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm starting to learn that piece a little bit more throughout my life is allow myself to heal. I don't have to be the toughest guy all the time. But I want to shift here as we come to closing here because I want to talk about your time at Stanford because I know it was your dream. Talk to me a little bit about the recruiting process. You had offers everywhere. We were talking about this. Why Stanford? Was it solely because of Mike Mussina, or why did you pick Stanford? And talk to me a little bit about your career there.
Yeah, I'm going to label baseball players bad, but baseball players are, I think it's kind of prideful too. They're generally pretty dumb guys. There's exceptions, certainly, but overall, the best baseball players are space cadets. They're guys that literally can just have nothing going on between their ears. And they just see ball, hit ball, see glove, throw ball to glove. Oh, something bad happened. Just going to see, throw the ball to the glove again. It's amazing to be able to simplify it like that. It's an art. Sometimes it requires probably some anatomy makeup, but a lot of the times you can get to what you discussed with, instead of thinking about the 7 things that just went wrong, how about we think about the one thing that's about to go good? So it almost works for baseball players that I think we are majority space cadets. I'd love for someone to debate me on that. I've spent a lot of time in locker rooms with these guys. I'm one of them probably. And Stanford, as I mentioned, everyone just went to my community, like my local university. If we had 57% of my graduating class went to Bloomsburg University, which was great. It's an unbelievable college. My parents went there. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like, I just had Mike Mussina as such a role model that the more I looked into it, I just watched everything he did. I just was like, man, to my point, he was the top guy, top dog. He was the best of the best. What was his path? Well, he went to Stanford, which is a really hard school to get into. And, if baseball doesn't work out, you'll be okay. And I valued academics. I wasn't an academic, but I valued them because once again, it kind of like gave me this validation in the world, like potentially, which at the time was fine. It motivated me. And so the way this worked out, and if you're a kid listening, I implore you to do it the same way. I didn't know what to do. My parents didn't know what to do. I didn't have a mentor that said I should do this. I just thought, what's going to give me the best opportunity to go there? So in 9th grade, I took like the SAT and ACT, like 2 years ahead of schedule, which actually ended up being my best 2 scores because of the math sections and the writing we were doing. That's what I was doing at that time in 9th grade. I took these tests 3 more times because I had to get like a 2,000 on the SAT. We had 3 parts. It was 2,400. I had to get like a 2,000. Maybe it was a 1,900, somewhere right in there. I think I ended up getting a 2,000, and I had to get a 32 ACT. Well, I took it and got my best scores my freshman year. I took it again over the course of my sophomore, junior, and got worse because I moved on. I was taking calculus, and that's not in these tests, so take them earlier, I guess. But I nailed down that piece. And the way I did that is I just bought some practice books. I didn't hire anybody, didn't pay these outrageous people coming into your house to tutor you. I just bought the practice books and I took the test. Like probably the most straightforward thing you could do to study and practice. And I was thinking, how can I get on Mark Marquez's radar, the head coach 9? How can I get on Rusty Filter's radar, our pitching coach at the time? And what I did is I just would call these. I'd call them. I'd send them an email. As soon as I got a response back and there's a number attached to it, I would call them. I remember one time I called Dean Stotts, who was the Stanford legend coach. He wasn't there. He left out before I got there. But it was midnight my time. I was studying. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to call him. What's the worst thing he's going to do? Is he ignore my call? I'll leave a voicemail. Just tell him I'm thinking about him. I'd love to make it out to camp. He answers my call. And he goes, son, what are you doing calling me at midnight? I said, honestly, I was just sitting here doing schoolwork. You know, the answer you want to hear? He goes, why don't you go to bed? He goes, you have baseball game tomorrow? I said, yeah. He goes, well, good luck, but go to bed. I said, okay. But you know, like Dean Stotts remembers that. We talked about it when I was there. Hey, I remember you called me at midnight. It was different. It wasn't just, you know, the same recruiting pitch he gets all the time. And so I just put myself in the best situation. And so when I went to area code games, which I talked about earlier, I had a template of just an email. I went on every West Coast school's website that I wanted to go to. San Diego State, UCLA, Pepperdine, USC, which I really wanted to go to. Did I say Pepperdine? Cal, Stanford, and you know, Oregon State, all the schools up the West Coast. I sent them the same email and I just changed the coach's name. And I said, hey, I'm interested in going to your school. I'm a sophomore, going to be a junior going to area code games. I'm going to be out your way from Pennsylvania. I'd love to visit. Can we set up a time? And every single school got back to me and said yes. Every single one. Granted, I had the leverage of being at area code games a year early, but I don't know if that was all of it. They all got back to me. Head coach, yes, come visit. The only school that didn't was UCLA. And Coach Savage said, sorry, man, we only recruit SoCal, and we had our recruiting class figured out in 9th grade, which is pretty amazing. But I out of that, I really wanted to go to USC Stanford. I mean, really wanted to go to USC and also really want to go to Stanford. I didn't know. Well, right away, the first school I visited was USC. Couldn't wait to go. Coach Hubbs was there. I loved him. I couldn't get over the fact that USC was like in the middle of the city, confined in like a tight area. And it like growing up on a 500-acre farm, it kind of drove me insane. So it was like, I wanted to go so bad. I grew up idolizing USC. You know, they have the most national championships of any college program. They're on the up and up. And I just remember getting to campus and being like, this is beautiful, but I don't think I can put myself in the middle of the biggest city in the nation. So I kind of ruled that out. And the day later, I went up to Stanford. And they have a camp. And at this point, they only recruited if you went to the camp. So every single kid that had been at Stanford had to at least pitch or something or hit at their camp. It was like their big ploy. Like, you go to Stanford, you come to this camp. So everyone went. I pitched. I did really well. 9. Mark Marquez, our head coach, we call him 9. That was his number. Took me on this big visit. Saw Condoleezza Rice. The campus is 8,800 acres. It's Disney World of colleges. If you're ever in the area, just go visit. Go drive through. It's unbelievable. But nothing happened. They're pumped about it. I could tell they were. I was excited. I pitched great. I struck out every kid I faced. Faced like 5 kids. Struck them all out. Confidence was there. And anyways, a month later, I was about to take a recruiting visit to Virginia. And I've been in contact with Stanford. It's September. And my dad, we're on the way down. And, you know, thanks to my dad again, he goes, why don't you call Rusty Filter? I remember saying, no, Dad. Like, if they want me, they'll call. You know, kind of thing. Like, I've showcased. He goes, dude, just give him a call. What's the worst thing that can happen? So I'm like, all right, Rusty Filter. Call it up. Hey, Colton, what are you doing? Oh, I'm actually headed down to a recruiting visit. Yeah, I didn't say much more than that. He goes, hey, I actually want to tell you something. How would you like to be the first kid in our class, in our you know, incoming 2014 class or whatever, however he said it? And I was like, yeah, we'll figure out the scholarship. I don't even care. Like, I'm coming. So once again, it required me making a phone call. Maybe he would have made that call. I'm sure he would have, given I was the first one to be recruited there in our class. But same thing. Just I was elated. We turned around, sat down to Virginia. We turned around, went home. That was it. I was so pumped. And Stanford was just the coolest experience. One, I think, because I had like achieved my dream. You know, that was a win right there. I felt like everything else was the true cherry on top. And that changed as I got better. And all of a sudden, you know, the draft became the new cherry on top and everything. But I went there and I just met the best people in the world. I was really scared because I grew up, you know, like I said, in a very rural Pennsylvania farm town. I was scared of all these elites that I was going to meet. And, you know, these stuck up, snobby private school kids you hear about. It's like there's just the best people in the world out there. Just everyone just trying to achieve, you know, the ultimate success and work hard. And, you know, you do it together, which I thought was really cool. And college sports allows you to immediately have friends when you get on campus, which is like just maybe the best part about college athletics alone right there. You have, you know, 30, 35 built-in friends, but it was an amazing thing from there. But I'll never forget how that recruiting process went.
The thing that you keep saying that I love, and it's a superpower, is what's the worst that could happen? we fear the word no. But when you hear the word no, or something doesn't go according to plan, you quickly realize it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
So think about all the opportunities we miss or pass up on because we're worried about no or the worst. So if there's one thing I can say that you learned from your dad that's awesome and everyone should take is, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
Pick up the phone call. Go shake the coach's hand, look in their eyes. Build those intangible skills that will set you apart from the physical skills. The things that people remember. Because like you said, so many people now can throw 95 to 100. So many people now can run 4.40s.
Yeah.
But how many young kids these days are willing to walk up to a coach, shake their hand, look them in the eye, thank them for the opportunity, to send all these different schools emails, hey, I'm interested in coming up. To make yourself rememberable, I think is one of the most amazing parts of your story is that intangible piece.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful place to wrap it. I could talk to you. I frequently say this, but I really could talk to you for a long time. When we go back to your house later and go dinner later, we will talk for a lot longer. But can't thank you enough for coming on. If people want to reach out to you, they want to find you. If you have anything to promote, please, let people know where they can find you and take the next time to promote right now.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to find me is just on my Instagram. I'm pretty active on Twitter. I'm usually reposting my wife's content. She's usually posting about our family or whatnot, but I'm on it. I'll see anything. Right now, I'm still trying to play. If a team calls, I'm saying yes. I still want my daughters to be able to see their dad in a uniform, and my wife wants that for our family too, and her support's great. I miss it every day, and I still love that feeling that I can bring, and so I'm excited about that. But if not, there's some other things that I'm working on, just on the personal with entrepreneurship and what's next in business. I'm still figuring that out, so stay tuned. I hope in a couple months we can get back on here and I can tell you some really exciting things that'll pertain to a lot of other athletes. Right now it's under wraps, but we'll definitely discuss it, as I think it's going to be super impactful for the podcast. But yeah, for now, feel free to reach out. I want to, this is one thing that I think if you're going to give me this time is that I've realized I have a really good opportunity to help people because I've been through some things that I think I don't have maybe advice for you, but I can listen well. And I just love helping in that way. So if you're a younger kid, if you're someone my age, whatever it is that, anything's related that we've talked about, just reach out to me. I love doing it. I love, that's what gives me joy. Like, my identity is not in baseball. I'm a chain breaking joy giver. That's what God calls me. He does. And that's truly what makes me happy. So reach out about anything. I'm more than happy to talk about it.
I'll be rooting and praying for you, as you know, to get that extra opportunity. You deserve it. I hope it comes your way. If it doesn't, you still have amazing things, an amazing career to sit your hat on. But can't thank you enough for coming on. Listeners, make sure to tune in next week. Like, rate, subscribe. Check us out at athletic42.com. Thanks, my man. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, man. Awesome.